So now I would like to welcome our speaker, Adam Wilson. He is a product designer who has been creating category leading digital products since the release of the iPhone. His design studio, Polyform, has shipped more than 100 consumer products for startups and large corporations, including clients like Nike, Disney, Amazon, and Shell. Welcome, Adam.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming out tonight. Really appreciate it. We're going to talk about just a ton of stuff that is really near and dear to my heart, being a product designer in the startup space. As mentioned, if you have any questions, drop them in the chat. There's going to be a Q&A afterwards where we can get into the nitty gritty of whatever your particular questions are or your situations with your own startups or startup ambitions. But the point of this presentation is to give you just a really good holistic understanding of like what is design and design thinking and how could it be applied to my business? How could it be applied to, any problems you have in your business? How can you use it if you're not a designer? And who are the people that do these kind of roles? What are the different roles? Just kind of the whole gambit of what is design in the startup ecosystem, in the business ecosystem. So without further ado, let's get into it. All right, so again, I'm Adam. Hi, everybody. I am one of the co-founders of Polyform Studio. We have offices in Vancouver, Canada. We have one in Los Angeles, and we have one in Hayward, California, which is just over the bridge from Silicon Valley, just kind of like south of Oakland. I've been designing startup products, tech products since, as mentioned, since the iPhone came out. I was super lucky to be on a team that launched 3 of the first 100 apps that launched with the App Store. So we were there literally the day the App Store went live. Prior to that, I was a chef and just thought, tech was this cool, creative avenue that I could use as a way to kind of have a creative and expressive career. Once the food thing got kind of I kind of hit my limit with like the chefing and the restauranteering and stuff, and started in industrial design. Moved to founding a couple of my own startups, which failed. Started a services model company here in Vancouver called Momentous Software, which we sold in 2017. Started a couple other companies since then. One is Virtual Visions. We create in-store retail digital experiences for companies like Lululemon and Uniqlo. So this can be like endless aisle kiosks. This can be like any kind of tech that's set up in a retail brick and mortar store. We do all types of product tracking and this kind of stuff. Polyform Studio is the design studio. As mentioned, we design apps, we do hardware, we do AR stuff. Shape Immersive is kind of our sister company that just does all of the AR and VR work. So anytime we need 3D stuff or we're working in Unity or Unreal or something like this, they do all the work. And then Skinnerware is one of my latest kind of endeavors. We're creating like counter surveillance wearables, which is a super interesting field in this day and age. So been in the startup game for a long time, shipped a ton of products, really coming from a background of intense startup, design, ship, get it out kind of methodology. Polyform itself, we have close to 50 designers. We've done over 100 consumer product launches. When you're doing a volume of products like that, when I say consumer product, what do I mean? Like a consumer app, like a piece of hardware, like a wearable, perhaps, anything like that. When you're producing, company after company after company's worth of products, you have to be very, very efficient at it, right? Because at our heart, we're a services company, right? So we need to deliver on time, we need to deliver on budget, we have to be able to hear somebody's crazy idea for a startup and actually translate that to a real world product, get it into market, test it with customers, make sure we leave them on a trajectory to success. So a lot of the advice and methodologies I'm going to talk about in this presentation comes from that background of not just working at one company for 20 years, but over the last 15 years working with literally hundreds of different startups to get their product either off the ground as a MVP, a minimum viable product, or to take those MVPs and transform them into kind of category leading version ones and version twos. So that's kind of what I'm about. That's what we do. Again, at Polyform, we make apps, we make hardware, we make augmented reality stuff. So all of this talk about design and design thinking and the process, it's all through the lens of starting a business that is software focused, software dependent a lot of times, but can, as you'll see, can be applied to literally any type of business. If you're a services company, if you're a some type of trading company, if you're in crypto or fintech or something like this, it's all applicable. At this point, I think we've worked in like every industry, and our process for every project is the exact same. So I think a lot of what we're going to talk about here, you should be able to apply to whatever you're doing. Okay. Yeah, we work with a ton of big brands. This is just kind of to let you know that I know what I'm talking about. It's great working with the big brands because they have a lot of rules in place. So it's kind of like working with a coloring book, right? They give you the lines and we get to color within them. In that, there's a lot of great stuff that you can do. It's amazing to be able to contribute to a brand like Disney or Red Bull or Uniqlo or Activision, where they're doing really cool things that as a team we really enjoy. But we really do prefer working with startups, and especially startups that are either at the idea stage or startups that kind of have their idea in market, just got maybe their seed funding and are now looking to like take it up a notch and actually make it a really, really high quality experience that they can start to gain market share with. So why am I here chatting with you? To the point of loving working with startups, I love when startups succeed. I think that is the only way to change the world for the better, is to have new ideas that are good have a chance to become great companies, great startups. And I really firmly believe that that design is the differentiator. And there's a lot of, when I say differentiator, I don't mean in the market. I mean, it's the difference between your startup living or dying, is how much design and design thinking you have in place in your organization at two kind of key inflection moments in your startup journey. We'll talk about that more later. But there's a lot of really great evidence now that that backs this up. I reference and include links to this McKinsey study that came out, I think, at the end of 2018. So it's not even that new anymore, but it really points to some incontrovertible evidence that design is basically the thing that determines your success as a business now in this kind of day and age. And especially if you're a consumer product. So it's one thing if you're like some B2B banking software that, people, it's being imposed on people that they have to use it. Then it can be a shitty experience. It can be really difficult to use. People will still have to use it. But if you're making a consumer product, something that somebody's going to buy on the shelf, or something they're going to download from the app store, or they're going to go to a website and experience, there's really there's no chance of survival unless you're employing some of these strategies in how you improve your product and how you run your business. So unfortunately, I think design is, if you look at any startup, there's kind of four major pillars. There's development and engineering. There's like the business side. There's marketing and sales, and then there's product and product design. And I think of those four pillars, product and product design are often the most misunderstood, perhaps the least understood. I bet a lot of people on this call today have a business background or perhaps a engineering background. There's probably very few that have a design background. And the founding, I read a study recently that was talking about how the founding members of startups in North America, only 4% of them are designers. So most startups, like 96% of startups, don't have a designer in their founding party. So most startups don't have designers working at them, but design is the thing that determines if they're successful or not. That's a problem, right? And that's why most startups fail. So hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a good sense of how you can employ some of these things at your company or with your startup ambitions to help kind of, survive. So what we're going to cover is four main things. One is, what is design? When I'm talking about design, what am I even talking about? Are we talking about just pictures, or are we talking about graphic design, or what are interface design, or what? So we'll define what design is, and then we'll talk about the different disciplines, the different types of design: UI design, UX design, interaction design, etc. Then we'll talk about, in practice, what all these things look like in like a large scale company that has an established product and an established design team. And then we'll talk about what it looks like in practice at a company that's just starting out. So maybe where you all are at. Then we'll talk about some tips and tricks that you can employ today as a non-designer to increase your ability in your organization, I guess, to have a well-designed product. So hopping into part one, what is design? It's really just a way about thinking about everything, right? How it works, how it's made, what it does, actions you take, everything contributes to the design. And something I like to really try and impart on people is that like the design of your experience as a brand or as a product is happening whether or not you're consciously doing it, right? So if you don't have a design department and you don't put any time into design and you just engineer, it's like, from the user's perspective, there's still a user experience design there. It just hasn't been considered, right? So this is happening whether you're consciously doing it or not. So you should definitely be consciously doing it, not just doing it on autopilot. A lot of the term design thinking has caught a lot of steam recently. This is something from IDEO. They kind of developed this methodology, and it's really great because it's a really clear, linear way of like applying design to a different problem or process. So basically, when you're thinking about like designing something, like I want to design this water bottle. The three main things you want to consider and that will inform your design thinking, your design decisions, is the desirability. Do people want it? Do people want another water bottle? The feasibility, can you build it? Do you have the actual ability to build it? And the viability, can it grow? Do the financials make sense? Does the technology make sense? Are we on the verge of like some new technology that'll make water bottles obsolete in a year? Always thinking about these three things. And design thinking is really all about starting with desirability. Do they want it? Also known as starting with your customer, right? So I'm sure you've all heard a lot about like user-centric design and designing for the customer first and this kind of thing. Really, that's like what design thinking is all about, right? And when you're thinking about starting a startup and you're thinking about starting a new product or building a new product, people can come to that idea from any of these three angles. You'll see engineers often come from the feasibility standpoint. Can you build it? Before they think about should they build it, or do people actually want it, right? That's when you get these, super smart guys coming out of MIT, and they have developed this amazing new thing, but there's no market for it, and they've got kind of like a round peg and all these square holes, and they're trying to find somebody to sell it to, or find some use case that they can kind of shove this widget into. That's generally not the right way to go about it. Generally, that's going to cost more money in the long term. It's going to have less chance of being successful than if you start with, do people actually want it? And putting a ton of time and effort into validating that with the market. So design is all about consideration. It's just thinking. It's just being considerate. It's just thinking about how something's going to be made. That's all design really is. And design thinking is just thinking about all that stuff through the lens of the customer and what the customer wants. What's the customer's problem you're trying to solve? So that's great. Okay, so how do we do it though, right? So you have a plan for this startup. You're going to make this cool widget. It makes sense to you, right? Of course, it makes sense to you that this is a great idea. But how do you know that the market wants it, right? This is something that like plagues most startups, is trying to figure out if the market wants it. And and using design thinking is how you can figure this out. So design thinking is a process. Like if you want to employ design thinking at your organization to solve problems, it's literally just these 5 steps. The first is to emphasize, or empathize, sorry. It does say emphasize there, but it's supposed to say empathize. So have empathy towards your user or your customer. Understand where they're coming from. Why do they need a new water bottle, or why do they need this piece of accounting software, and really define the problem there. Like, why are their current accounting software solutions not meeting their needs? Or, why is the market not moving on this opportunity? And then come up with a solution, prototype it, test it, improve the solution, prototype, test it, and improve the solution. And then having an established startup is basically just an endless cycle through these 3 things, where you just keep making it better, prototyping it, testing it, solving it. So this can be used for literally anything. And I want to kind of dive a little deep here on the process of design thinking early, so that for the rest of the presentation, you can kind of know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about these things. So again, design, it's just being considerate about the decisions you make. And design thinking is being considerate about the decisions that you make through the lens of what your users might want, right? And how you're going to better serve them, better serve your customer. First, getting into their shoes, right? Understanding your users. This is really just a bunch of research, right? You want to get in touch with your users as much as you can, do user interviews, surveys, have conversations with them. So if you're building something right now and you've never talked to your users or your potential future users about if they want this or not, or why they would want it, you should stop and you should talk to them. And this should be the first thing you do, and something that you do hopefully every day, every week, as much as is possible. Something that as a designer you really need to consider is that the decisions I make about a product for Gen Z, or if I'm making a product that's for like women in their 50s or something, I can't possibly know what those people want. I need to talk to them. I'm not those people. Designing this app for some Gen Z teenagers isn't about me or my opinions or anything. It's all about them and solving their problems. So if you're trying to make something for somebody and you're not even talking to them about it along the way, you're pretty much guaranteed going to miss the mark, right? So, doing those user interviews, doing surveys, having some conversations. Um, pardon me. At the end of this presentation, I've got a whole ton of resources around like user interview templates and survey templates and like how to do it and stuff. So I'm going to be talking about a lot of things that you should do, but just kind of try and take it all in. And then later on, when it comes time to actually do it, I do have a bunch of resources that you can just kind of follow along with, because this is all very standard stuff. This is not like, you don't need to make up any of this. You could literally like just Google how to do a user interview and read 2 blog posts and know enough to do one and get like effective feedback from it. That's going to really help you on your journey. The second one is define, right? So we understand these people, we're kind of in their shoes, we know where they live, we know what they want. Now we got to define the problem that we're solving for them. And where there is a user problem, there is a user opportunity, right? If there's no such thing as like a mug that keeps my coffee warm, but everybody wants warm coffee for more than just a couple of minutes, then there's an obvious user need that's out there in the market. And if you're building a product right now and you're thinking about launching soon and you're kind of worried about like, how am I going to get people to sign up for this thing? How am I going to get people to use it? If it is a real user pain point, there will be latent demand out in the market. There'll be people just waiting for something like this. It's like I'm drinking my cold coffee every day. I'm just waiting for a mug that's going to keep it warm. So as soon as I see one, I'm like, yep, that solves my problem. I'll take it. I'll just buy it. And if you don't have that kind of a reaction, it's a good sign that people maybe don't need your product, or the solution it's providing is outweighed by the cost of providing it or something like this. So you really got to define that problem that your user has. Then you got to ideate, right? Ideating, it's just using your imagination, right? It's just brainstorming a ton of stuff that's going to address the pain point. And it's gives your team the kind of ability to say, okay, how could we solve this, and try and come up with a lot of things. Again, this is something, using imagination, drawing, kind of coming up with different solutions is usually like out of most people's wheelhouse, or where they're comfortable. So there's lots of workshop templates and stuff that I, again, included in this document at the end. But, when you're making anything, something we say at Polyform is only change 5%. And what that's supposed to mean is that like pretty much everything's been done. So like if you're making an app that has some function where you have to pick a day on a calendar and then another day on a calendar, just go see how Airbnb is doing it and copy that. Because they've tested the heck out of it and they've spent all this money to make sure it's the best calendar picker in the game. And it's a really joyful experience for everybody that uses it. Don't start from just a blank page trying to like redefine the calendar or something. It's basically just a waste of time. So ideating is often a combination of gathering inspiration from other similar products and then kind of like remixing it, or like just kind of like jamming on that idea. And then prototyping. So I think we all hopefully know what a prototype is, but essentially it's just like something that might look like the finished product, or it's something that might operate like the finished product, but not look like it. Those are kind of the two major types of prototypes: the looks like prototype and the operates like prototype. The reason for making prototypes early is that I could draw some pictures on like 6 sticky notes and have a paper prototype of how a website might work, that's a lot faster and a lot cheaper than writing a whole bunch of code or hiring people to make the first version of a website. If you can just have some really scrappy things put together very quickly and show your potential customers, and they can tell you if they like it or not, that will save you thousands of hours, millions of dollars. I'm really gonna like repeatedly knock on this point, but prototyping outside of code, really you shouldn't build anything in code, or if you're building a physical product in industrial design, until you've made like 20 different prototypes that are lo-fi, that people have had their hands on and given you feedback on, because you're going to have to go through that process sometime, right? At some point, one of your users is going to have to have this in their hands and tell you feedback about it. So it can either be after you've spent a year building the thing, or it can be after you've spent 10 minutes just drawing it out.
So Adam, we have a question in the chat about prototype. So Linda wants to know, what is the concrete difference between an MVP and a prototype?
So it's the P at the end there. So an MVP is a minimum viable product. So a product is something somebody can buy. It's something somebody can use. And when I talk about this, sorry, when I talk about solving this user problem, an MVP is the minimal viable solution to that problem. A prototype is not. It's just something that looks like that thing. It could just be made in Photoshop or Sketch, or it could be hand drawn or something. It doesn't actually serve any function aside from getting feedback on what the ultimate thing might actually do. Good question. So that's the difference. And then testing, right? So I've got this prototype. It could be now, if you're at the stage where you have a product already, you already have an app or a software product, let's say, and you want to test a new feature with customers, that's kind of a different story, because it's not so difficult to make that in code and get it into the hands of a handful of customers. But if you're at the early stages, you want to test as much as you possibly can with these lo-fi prototypes before you go spending your budget or your hours on actually developing the thing in code. So testing is immensely important in the early stages, and it doesn't need to be anything formal. It doesn't need to be some double-blind, very unbiased test. It can be you just sitting with like a couple of friends and like showing them your sketchbook and getting their feedback. Well, maybe not your friends, because they'll tell you how great it is, and that's not what you want. You want everybody to tell you how terrible it is, because that's the only feedback that is going to help you improve it. So if everybody's just telling you how great it is, you're probably just talking to the wrong people. So you should look at your test group a little closer. So I come up with this design for the water bottle or the app. I make a prototype of it. I show a bunch of potential customers. They give me a bunch of feedback. I take that feedback and I apply it to the design, and then I show it to them again. And then they give me more feedback, and then I do that again. And I go around in this circle forever. You can think about like the iPhone, right? Every year they come out with a new one, and it's this exact flow, right? They see what's not working with the current edition, or what competition's doing, or what the market has asked them for above and beyond what the current iPhone provides. They iterate on the form factor of the phone, on the internals of the phones. They internally prototype and test it to make sure that when it hits the market, it's not all buggy and crazy. It's like pretty good. And then they release it to market, and then they do it again, right? And that's step 6, is implement. So it can be easy to get caught in this trap here and just go around and around and around, never actually ship anything. you have to ship. The shipping is the most important part. So all of this should always be in service of getting you to that MVP at least, because if you're a startup without an MVP, you're not a startup yet. You're just somebody with an idea. The game doesn't even start until you're in market. Once you're in market, then it really begins. So this is design thinking. So this has been a bit of a ramble. I hope you all kind of stayed with me here, but again, design is just being considerate about all the decisions you make when it goes into making something. Design thinking is just having that all through the lens of what the user would want.
So
So,
Adam,
so
sorry,
now,
sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you,
no, go
but
ahead.
before you move on, we have a few questions in the chat about the last slide. So first question in the chat is from Sean. So what should prototyping cost on average, do you think?
That's an impossible question. I mean, it depends if you're talking about a piece of software or a piece of hardware, or um, are you testing the concept of a product, or are you testing one very particular user flow? What is it an augmented reality thing, or a VR thing, or a regular app? I would say that, like, to try and put a number on it, I would say if you're making an app, you could probably find somebody on Fiverr who could translate the idea that you have into like a Marvel or Envision click-through prototype for like a couple $100. Is that going to be like the design of the app? Absolutely not. That's just going to be like 4 or 5 screens that illustrate the concept to the point that you can get good feedback from the people you show it to. And actually, to that point, this is a great question. To that point, when you're showing people prototypes, you have to be very aware of their level of understanding of what a prototype is. So if you show somebody a wireframe, for example, it's all these gray boxes, right? To people that don't know what a wireframe is, they won't be able to give you any good feedback because they have no idea what they're looking at. So if you're just showing the general public these prototypes, it's in my opinion, the best direction to go is to try and show them something that looks like a finished product, even if there's a lot of holes, like there's lots of buttons that don't go anywhere, or it's missing key user flows. Just get something in their hands that kind of communicates the concept without them having to use their imagination too much. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, I think so. So next question comes from Victoria. When testing each new iteration, do you test with the same users or different users each round?
Always different users. And I'll tell you, I also will test between a variety of tester types. So if you have the time and the budget, in an ultimate world, I would test with users that are already on the platform or already using the product. We get some of those. We get a couple potential users that have never heard of the brand before. And then we'll use some professional user testers from like usertesting.com or Validately. And they will all give you very different types of feedback based on what they know about the product, or what they what they understand about software and the development process and stuff like that. So like anything, the more diverse your pool can be, the stronger your solution will be. So yeah, you got to watch out of it's easy to fall into an echo chamber of having your board of brand ambassadors, and you show them everything, and it's just this echo chamber of everything you want to hear because they're all in love with the brand and the product. You don't want that. You want to get a variety of feedback from everybody, so you make sure you're covering all your bases. And even like talking to people who are like seeking out people who are colorblind, or other things like that, who are going to have a unique perspective on the product is also super important.
Okay. And I see that, Rose, you have your hand raised, so I'm going to let you unmute so that you can ask your question for Adam.
All right.
Hey, Rose.
Thanks, Adam. This has been really helpful. I, what I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to create a physical product, and I'm just kind of stuck on the prototyping side of things. I've been reading competitors' reviews, and one of the things that they talk about is a seal. So I'm trying to create a food storage container. So I'm not quite sure. Like you talk about a product that operates like the product, like the final product. I'm just not sure whether doing like a graphic image is going to help me, because I think my users were like to look and feel. So I'm not quite sure how to get to that prototype stage. So I just need some idea or some help in making that leap. Do you kind
Absolutely.
question?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. So hardware is hard, is what we like to say in the software business, and why we do hardware, but most people don't, is because it's super hard. And I mean, you're just talking about a food storage container, right? We're not even talking about some crazy, wearable or something, and it's already tricky for you. So I'll say that if you're talking about making consumer goods that are at a marginal or low price point, and are a physical good, my best recommendation for prototyping and industrial design and stuff like this is to find somebody who sells something very comparable on Amazon, take a screenshot of it, and then go to AliExpress and use that screenshot to do a visual search, and then use AliExpress to find the factories that make it, and then communicate directly with the factory to get them to make a slightly different version of the thing that they're already making, with perhaps a seal or a better seal or something like this.
Yeah.
And they'll send you samples and stuff.
So my problem is that I'm trying to create something that doesn't exist already in the market. So it's not simply just going to something that's similar and reinventing that. I'm trying to come up with something that's totally different. So
well, we can get deep into it. I will say just candidly, like if nobody else is doing it, there's a reason. So it's either like nobody wants it, or it's too expensive, or there's some technical reason it can't be done that is unforeseeable. But most things are already on the market in some capacity. But if you absolutely can't find somebody and you just need to prototype it, I mean, I would recommend, like you're probably talking about plastic injection or 3D printing or something of that nature. Creating prototypes locally is probably going to take something like getting an industrial designer, getting them to do a design, getting this part made there and that part made there. It can be very expensive. So it's I mean, we can talk some more on it. I'll actually give you my email at the end of this, at the very last slide, because I have lots of resources around this kind of thing. Maybe I can help you further with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think that's all the questions we have so far in the chat.
Cool. Okay, great. This is great. Thank you for your questions. So that's design thinking. These are the tools of the designer. We can talk about the different design software people use. We can talk about all these other different resources and references and education people have. But at the core of it, this is the entire toolbox for most designers. And when you think of the customer journey a customer would take, in this example I have here for a retail store or some type of retail purchase, there's all these crazy touch points, right? First, you hear about the awareness phase. A lot of you have probably seen this before if you're familiar with customer journey maps or customer service design or anything like that. but right, awareness, you hear about the brand for the first time ever, you start seeing it around, maybe you see the ad for the 5th time on YouTube. Now you're like, oh, you know what, maybe that would be a good thing to buy. You sign up for the email newsletter, you know, start getting a little bit more into the brand, you check out the website, you make the purchase. Now you're like, you know, getting into the community a little bit or following them on social media. You might have something go wrong with it, you need to call the call center, you know, and then loyalty expansion is just trying to transform your customers into like evangelists, right? Get them onto some type of program where they're locked into continually buying your Starbucks coffee because they love the points, or they're telling all their friends about it because when your friend buys the coffee and mentions your name, you get a free coffee or something. So there's all these different customer touch points where a customer comes in contact with your brand, your product, your service, and you can literally just, if like say the chat part of your customer service is, you know, not working, you're finding most people come out of your customer service chat with like 1-star satisfaction or 2 stars. This is how you fix it, right? Is you just emphasize or empathize, define the product, iterate, prototype, test, and then deploy, right? Or implement, it says on the previous slide. So this is literally like a system that you can just apply to every touch point and every problem in your company. And, you know, as long as you continue to iterate, prototype, test, take the feedback and improve on it, it will solve the problem to some degree, right? So this is what I was talking about before, about how like design saves startups and how it's a requirement for a consumer product to be well designed. When I say well designed, what I mean, and when anybody says well designed, and when McKinsey says the business value of design, what they're all talking about and what I'm talking about is taking this process and applying it to every one of these little nodes in your company, and every little touch point offering the same amount of consideration. And if you do that with all these different nodes, like this is Apple, right? Apple does this kind of consideration and design to everything that they do. Every little email you get from them will look just as amazing as the website. And when you go into the store, you know, like your Apple ID is tied to the service ticket and tied to everything, right? It's this very integrated system. That is how great products are made, is this kind of consideration of every single touch point and just these 5 steps applied to every different touch point. So that's what design is, right? It's just a system to solve your problems. And design thinking is just when you do it with your user in mind. So that's what design is. If you were unclear before, that's what it is. But let's talk about the disciplines now, right? Because there's many different kinds of design, right? You probably are all super aware of like graphic design and web design and UI design, UX design, stuff like this, right? You maybe even have seen this meme, which is kind of like the classic, what's the difference between UI and UX? Well, UX is how people use it. UI is what it looks like. This is kind of a cheeky thing that's maybe not as descriptive as it could be, but I think it does a good job of illustrating the difference, right? In reality, it's like quite a bit more complicated than that and a little more nuanced. I would divide all of design into 3 core categories when it comes to making a physical or digital product, and those are customer experience. This is anytime your customer interacts with the brand. So this could be social, this could be in store, this could be an email that they receive. Anytime they come in contact with the brand. So like, it's not when I come in contact with my Viceland jacket, it's when I see the Viceland show. User experience is anytime that the user comes in contact with the product. So this is me experiencing the UX of this jacket right now, and the UI is what's printed on it, right? the user interface. I mean, actually, I would say the sleeves maybe, or like a jacket's a weird example. I've never used that one before, but I think you can understand that the UI is the visual part. The UX is how it works. The customer experience is anytime somebody touches something that isn't your product, but is your company or brand. So we're going to dive into each one of these a little deeper here. First is UX. So UX stands for user experience, as you may know. This covers information architecture. So information architecture is basically just how the different pieces of your product fit together. So like a website will have the home page and the contact page and the about us page or something, right? How you travel from kind of one node to another and how those nodes are interconnected is the information architecture. The wireframes are the layout of information for each one of those nodes. So like a contact page would be, there's the header, then there's maybe a little hero image, and then there's, contact us, a little bit of copy, and then like the field where you can like type your little message to whoever you're trying to contact, right? So you can wireframe that out. You can make prototypes of that like we talked about before. And then content strategy also fits into here. This is more in like the marketing realm of things, but content is kind of the UX of marketing, right? It's the blog article or the actual Instagram strategy or something like this. So what that looks like practically is something like this, right? You've got your information architecture here, talking about this charity app where you've got a couple steps of onboarding, then you've got the welcome page. You can use Facebook login, email login. Once you're logged in, you've got all these great features and all their various functions. And you can see by this map how someone can traverse this mobile application. And then then we take this exact same map and we make it into low fidelity screens where you get a sense of what the content is here, right? It says calendar, there's a back and forward, bunch of little squares. Okay, this is a calendar, I understand that. These chat bubbles, okay, it's messages, right? It's very lo-fi, but it gets the concept across, right? So this is kind of the progression of design, is we decide what are all the components, how do they fit together? And then we think, okay, what are all the little bits of media and whatnot, or buttons or UI that will compose any of these screens? And then we start to, put a face on them and make a prototype that we can get in front of a user and they can click around on it and give us feedback. And then the content strategy is everything that is kind of the strategy behind what you see out there from the brand, whether it's social media, journalism, marketing, inbound traffic, how you handle your SEO, stuff like this. So this part is often the realm of like the marketing team and not really part of product. But at an early stage startup, especially, you don't have either of those departments. It's probably just you doing it all. So having these things be integrated is super important because it creates a much more like inclusive brand and product vision where everything kind of matches. And we'll talk about that next with UI design.
So Adam, before you move on, a couple questions in the chat.
Yeah.
So David is wondering if you are a designer and how do you manage crazy designers and how will you balance customer desires, design limitation, and cost?
Oh, wow. That's a mouthful of great questions. Yeah, I'm a designer. I have a master's in applied design. I went to school for industrial design, did industrial design for several years, and have been designing mobile apps since maybe 2007 or 2008. I right now manage about 50 designers at Polyform. I think we have 47. if they're crazy, I fire them. That's how I hire them and how I handle them. I, you know, somebody asked me once, like, what's the difference between a designer and an artist? Is that, an artist, their work is an expression of themselves, right? It's their soul up on the canvas, right, for everybody to see. A designer is literally just a problem solver. It's just, the user has this problem. How are we going to solve it? It has nothing to do with me as a person, or my ego, or my opinions, or what I think is best. It has 100% to do with what the user thinks is best. If I hate the color red and the user loves the color red, everything's going to be red. So if a designer is like not on that same vibe, then they don't work at Polyform, that's for sure. When it comes to handling costs and crazy clients, I am certainly, we're swamped with work. So it's certainly something that happens often for us to just fire clients or to say no to engagements that sound too crazy. Like I said earlier, we've shipped more than 100 consumer products. So oftentimes we know what things are going to cost much better than the client does. So, if they have all these crazy ideas for all these features of their app and it's going to be this wild game-changing thing, we will usually extinguish that passion and bring them into reality of what they can achieve with the money they have in their pocket and the resources they have in their company, and really hone in on building what is a true minimum viable product, and get to market and be successful. We invest in a lot of the companies that we work with, so their success is our success in a big way. And if we don't think a startup is going to be successful, often we just don't work with them. So usually they're pretty grounded in reality and not too crazy. Sometimes the crazy ones are fun if they have a ton of money, but usually those two things don't coincide. So that's hopefully that helps with that.
Yeah. And so Linda's got a couple questions here, I see. First one is, do I need to provide the customer journey to the designer of my prototype? And if so, how can I start? Is there a proper way to do it?
Right. So I'm just going to go back to that. Oh, wait, going the wrong way. I'll go back to this customer journey slide. So if you're a startup and you don't have a product yet, you don't have a customer journey, right? You probably, none of these things exist yet. What I would recommend is that you try and get from awareness to loyalty expansion with the least amount of nodes on this little chart is humanly possible. A big mistake a lot of startups make is they try and do all of this before their product's even launched. It's completely unnecessary. Anything after purchase is you shouldn't even be thinking about yet. Social media, if you have an Instagram account but your prototype isn't finished, you got to reevaluate your priorities, because the only thing you should be really worried about is making a really super great product and then fitting everything else around it. That being said, you need to have a plan for how these things are going to happen, right? So in your case, yeah, you need to produce some kind of customer journey map where you can have some plan in place that you're going to test and prototype and iterate for how you're going to get your product into the hands of your customers and beyond. What I would recommend is that you keep it super high level. It's, another thing is, when your product is complete and you're going to market, just choose one channel. I see so many people, they've got like a TikTok account and a Facebook account, an Instagram account, and a LinkedIn account. And, they're sending emails and they're writing Medium articles and they're doing all this stuff, but they're doing them all like poorly. So none of them are getting them any traction. Just choose one. Just do TikTok videos. Don't even have an Instagram account. Or just do LinkedIn advertising. Don't worry about anywhere else. Because you just need to be really, really great at one or two things, and then the rest will come. So I would say provide, a high level, just guess, just make it up. There's all types of processes for how to come up with this, but at the stage that you're at, if you're just making a prototype, just make it up and say, here's what I think it's going to do and how I think people are going to buy it, and then become loyalists or evangelists, and then say to your prototype person, but I just need you to worry about this one little tiny section. And so this is a customer journey map. If you were talking about the information architecture, this thing here, yes, you should just try and provide this to your designer. And if you can't make this, you can make this. Anybody can make it. I'm full screen, so I can't zoom in, unfortunately, but this literally just says onboarding 1, onboarding 2, onboarding 3, welcome page, Facebook login. Just look at other apps and how they do it, and just copy it. And then you'll have like one little node here that's unique to you, and you can just write whatever you want in it. But going to your prototype person with this, or even some hand-drawn sketches of this, all types of references from Pinterest and stuff like that, anything you can get together will help this person get to the best outcome for you, so you can get something to put in front of your customers that you can get good feedback on.
And that you kind of answered her second question, which was kind of around if she can use images and concepts from other people for her prototype, or she's actually wondering if there's any copyright issues if she does that.
No, there's no copyright issues, because you're not selling anything with the prototype. I'll talk about this again later on, but the best thing you can do when you're making a new product is make it feel like something your customer has already used. So if they open up your app and it's like, oh, this is exactly how Instagram works, and I can double tap it to like, or this is exactly how I would choose dates on Airbnb. That's great. That's what you want, right? You want users to come in, have no questions, just be able to navigate the thing on autopilot. And the way to do that is to follow the industry best practices. So saying that I'm using like the best practice for onboarding is, just a nice way of saying like, I saw this really great onboarding somewhere and just kind of copied it for my own purposes. And by the time you get through development and then out to the market, it will be so different that there's no fear that somebody's going to be like, oh, you ripped this off of Airbnb. But make sure you're looking at like the best examples. Don't just like grab something off Pinterest or Dribble and be like, make it like this. Make sure that what you're showing them is actually like a best in class implementation of that particular feature. Yeah.
Okay, great. And last one is, so Yama is wondering when the sustainability aspects are considered in product design.
This is amazing. That's a great question. I actually majored in sustainability when I was in university, so it's something I'm super passionate about. Unfortunately, the sustainability is often not considered. So it's up to you to consider it, and you should consider it from the very start. If you're making software, you're in a unique, good position where like the only thing you really need to worry about is energy and carbon offsetting, right? There's not much else going on, right? It's a bunch of ones and zeros on a server somewhere. And depending on how many users you have and how big your product is, that's really the only place that your internet, like that your app touches the physical world. Now, if you're talking about social sustainability, that's a whole other thing, right? Or economic sustainability. If you're talking about, am I worsening Gen Z's self-esteem by having an algorithm that serves them up certain content on Instagram, that's a whole different line of questioning versus environmental sustainability. I would say, when it comes to like social sustainability, companies like Facebook, Google even have been getting a really bad rap lately, because they made something that had never been made before. And before they knew really what was happening, it was way beyond their control. And, the general public has like no concept of what it means to manage a application that has literally billions of people using it hourly, and the vast amount of content produced there. So, they weren't thinking about sustainability early enough, and now it's biting them. So the sooner you're more aware and more considerate of those things, the better. But yeah, it's absolutely, I would say 100% the responsibility of the founders and the designers. So it's yeah, a good thing to consider, and you should.
Okay, great. Those are all the questions we have.
Fabulous. Thank you. So that is UX design. Again, it's the information architecture, it's the wireframes, it's the prototypes, it's the content strategy. It's kind of the skeleton behind the embodiment of the brand that everybody sees out in the world, right? You don't see the UX of an app, but it's ever present. You don't see the SEO behind a website, but it's ever present. What you do see is the UI. So this is the look and feel of a product, and it's designed to enhance that experience, right? This is the skin on the bones. This is the painting outside of the house. This is going to be composed of like your user interface design, your UI kit, interaction design. So the UX, so let's say you want to have a photo and you want to allow people to like it. So the UX might be a gray box where the photo goes, and then there's a little gray circle under it. That's the like button. The UI is that now there's a photo and there's a little red heart there. The interaction is that when I press the heart, it kind of explodes, right? So interaction design is often motion design. It's often some type of transition from one state to another. And then visual design is just kind of like where brand meets product. So you can see kind of some examples here of like in interface design where I've taken like kind of like the gray boxes over here, and now we've turned these gray boxes into color and shape and form and information. You can see the motion design here where the app, it transitions from one feature to the next or from one state to the next with motion and animation. You can see the website here and how it uses the same visual language and color scheme and type of illustration as the app does. And then this being kind of like a wacky UI kit, but just as an example of how all these kind of disembodied pieces can be designed individually and then composed together to create these interfaces and other visual pieces of design around the product. So that's UI. So again, UX is the bones, UI is kind of the skin on the bones, and then customer experience is the other core one. And this is kind of like everything that isn't the product. So, this could, if you're selling a physical good, let's say you're selling water bottles, this could be the water bottle store. This could be your social media. This is your marketing. This is what happens when somebody calls that 1-800 customer service line. And how does that experience, when they call the 1-800 number, somehow reflect the same experience that they have in the product or in the store? Is the disposition of the people on the other side of the phone like in line with the brand values? Stuff like this. So this is often it's often like stuff that people experience outside of the product, right? It's not the product. So it's marketing, brand, sales. Uniqlo does a great job of this. They're a retail brand. I met the CEO once in Japan. Uniqlo's customers of ours, and he described Uniqlo as a startup gone mad, because it was very much a startup under another umbrella company of retail brands that just blew up to become the second biggest retailer in the world inside of a decade. But here you can see how their office design, their store design, their posters, and even like, their in-store merchandising all looks and feels and acts the exact same. And then if you were to go to the app or the website, or you would look at the hang tag in the store or anything, it all feels like one system, right? And this is the customer's experience of the brand. And I'm sure if I were to call their customer support line, something would happen in that interaction that would somehow reflect what I'm seeing here in some way. So those are the three core ones, UI, UX, and CX. And then there's kind of a master discipline, which is product design. And product design is, a lot of people throw the term around now. It used to be something just for industrial designers. It was kind of a level of being an industrial designer was you're a product designer. Lots of people use it interchangeably for UI, UX designer. But really what it means is somebody who designs all of this stuff holistically, while also keeping in mind these external forces of what are the business needs, what are the user needs, what's the competition doing, what's the market doing, and using those external forces to, inform the decision making that they're making here. And then beyond that, you've got your specialists, right? These are, until you're like a very big company, these are often contractors, freelancers, agencies. You got your copywriters, photographers, user researchers, illustrators, industrial designers, 3D modelers. Basically, all the people you might need just once or twice, unless it's core to your business, and they're specialists, so they're expensive, so it doesn't make sense to bring them on staff, but are still designers. So these are kind of like all the different roles and responsibilities here that fall under the umbrella term designer, and how they all kind of fit together. Practically, it's these three things kind of feeding into one another, right? Your messaging and brand touch points respond to changes to the target markets and their preferences. That informs what things might look like. That informs what things might feel like. And it kind of just goes round and round with these three things feeding into one another to create a holistic brand and product ecosystem. So that's the disciplines. I don't know if we have any more questions about that.
Yeah, we
If
do
not,
have
I can.
a couple questions in the chat. And one of them was actually on your discussion on sustainability. So Linda was wondering more about the concept of sustainability, what it is and why it's important. And we actually had someone from one of the participants respond, and they linked one of the articles coming from McGill on more about that. So I don't know if you want to touch on that or a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll just keep it high level because that's a whole rabbit hole to go down. But sustainability, basically, there's three core pillars, right? There's environmental, economic, and social. And what is sustainability, right? A lot of times I think people just think about environmental and they just think about like recycling. really like the measure of if something is sustainable enough is if I take an action, right? Like I make a water bottle and I make this water bottle. If I scale that out to infinity, at what point do I destroy the planet, right? If you never destroy the planet, then the thing is sustainable. If you do eventually destroy the planet, then it's not. So by nature, everything is probably not sustainable, but there are some actions that are, you know, and the point is to look at like every little action that's taken making this water bottle and think, how can I change that action or change that ingredient or change that process to further out my timeline before I destroy the planet. A good example is Styrofoam cups, right? A lot of people would say like, oh, Styrofoam cups, they're terrible for the environment. They're just really bad. They're not sustainable. Reusable coffee mugs are the way to go. But when you really think about it, you know, Styrofoam, like one of the main environmental impacts of buying a coffee cup is that it has to get transported from its place of production to you. And the gas and the carbon and everything created there is usually most of the environmental impact related to that product. So like this particular coffee cup would have had to come in a cardboard box like this. You can fit maybe like 60 of them inside of a box and maybe like 1,000 boxes into a truck. So now you have like, what is my transportation debt for this one particular thing? Not to mention all the metal I had to pull out of the ground to make it. Styrofoam's shipped as a liquid, so you can ship a lot more because there's no space in between the cups, right? The cups can get made on site. I would have to use this metal coffee cup like 30,000 times before I have hit like a break-even point on its impact on the environment versus how much environmental impact I'm saving by not using a Styrofoam cup. I will definitely lose this before I've used it 30,000 times. So which is more sustainable, the Styrofoam cup or the metal one, right? It's a really, really hard thing. So sustainability is not like a perfect science and there's like something you can do to make something sustainable. It's just trying to be as conscious as you can of every decision that you make and how it impacts economics, social, and environmental, and how you can make that impact less or more positive.
Okay. And another question comes from David. So how much is Polyform involved in all aspects of CX, UX, and UI?
UX and UI, 100%. CX, less. We actually don't do a lot of CX stuff. We will do store design. So we do store design in terms of the technology used inside the store. Basically, any one of these brand touch points that has digital something related to it, we do work with, but we don't do sales or marketing or customer service stuff. We do some brand stuff, but not very heavily. Mainly just the UX, UI portions of the bubble are where we're at. And then we also have quite a number of specialists in the house. So when companies that have all of these roles need industrial design or illustrators or user testing, user research, stuff like that, we have specialists that they hire. And this is kind of like part of the model, right? Is that if you're a contractor, freelancer, or agency, you have to be a specialist or else you're a commodity and you're very cheap. So yeah, to answer your point, we do UX and UI A to Z for any type of digital or physical product. And then we also have a whole range of specialized skills.
Okay. And we have a question from another question from David. So how will you describe Steve Jobs? I think this is in reference to your other slide.
Yeah, Steve Jobs is great. I love Steve Jobs. He's a product design hero. Was he a designer? No. Was he a visionary? Yeah, for sure. Did he? You know what? Like a lot of people are either like fanatics about Steve Jobs, or they don't like him, and they say that he stole everything from you know, HP Labs and IBM. He did, but he was the first one to understand that like just building the product wasn't enough. You had to make it a great experience. And his devotion to design and having a design forward and a customer forward company is why Apple's like the #1 company in the world, is because he did that, and he was devoted to that before anybody else was, really. And everybody was just making widgets and then trying to sell them. So yeah, huge fan of Steve Jobs. And Johnny Ive, who is the head of design at Apple through all those years.
Okay, and the next question comes from Mohammed. How can I identify and choose a good UI?
So that's so I'll tell you, the best UI is one that is easy to use for the customer and is the straightest line between you know, what you'd call your hero's journey, right? So if I'm like, let's say you're making a workout app or something, right? And the goal of this app is for, as a user, is for me to come onto it and use it and to have a workout. So the best UI is the easiest one to use that creates the most minimum amount of friction between, you know, point A and the goal. And oftentimes what that means is following operating system standards. So I'll go over this actually in the tips and tricks section here, but Apple has a guide called the Human Interface Guide, and Android has a guide called the Materials Design Guide. And these are what they call operating system standards. And these are actions and UI and UX flows you get kind of for free from a development standpoint with the development tools and platforms you use to build these apps in. And they're also tested to death. So like if you just use the standard, you know, it's like, why would you program a new keyboard when you can just use this iPhone standard keyboard, right? This is like for every other thing for the UI, you know, whether it's a, you know, a field that you tap on and then type your name into, right? Apple has the standard one, a standard text field. They have a standard calendar picker. They have a standard tab bar. They have a standard everything, you know, grid view, feed view, everything. They have standards for and recommendations around and templates for. And the closer you stick to those operating system standards, the more familiar it will be for the user, and therefore the easier it will be to use. So my recommendation is, and again, this comes to our kind of Polyform saying of only change 5%. It's good because the more you deviate from what is standard in the market, the more the user has to learn to use your product. You know, a lot of people who are not experienced at this kind of stuff, it's like, oh, I want to do something different. You know, I want to do something that nobody's ever done before. The problem with that is that nobody knows how to use a tool that they've never used before. So there's inherently a lot of friction, right? So if you make it very similar to a lot of things they've already used, you're just removing all that friction. So that's what I would say about that.
Okay, great. Those are all the questions.
Amazing. So that's the disciplines: customer experience, user interface. Let's talk about this stuff in practice. And I just want to be aware of the time here because I know we're going a little long, but we're kind of doing like the Q&A during. So it'll cut into our Q&A time a little bit, but I think that's okay. Sorry about that. So in practice, so what is, okay, so there's all this stuff, right? There's all these crazy there's all these people, they've all got their own stuff to do. There's these, this crazy like customer journey chart with all these different things going on. All of these have people working on them and departments and all these things. It's overwhelming, right? It's a lot. It's a whole company worth of people and processes going on. What does that look like practically? Well, if you've never worked at a software company before, I want to introduce you to like the basics of how a software company operates or a startup. Usually they use a system called Scrum or Agile. And basically all that means is that something or a product is built with a series of iterations. They call sprints that are generally 2 weeks that break down big complex projects into little bite-sized pieces. So every startup I've ever worked with works this way. And if they don't, I get them working this way as soon as they can. This is also how you should work. If you're a software company or not, this is a way to add process to the madness that is starting a startup, is using a agile development methodology or some version of it. So the best design departments also do this. It started as a development and engineering thing, but I think, you could run a convenience store like this and it would be the best run convenience store in the world. So you've got your two core product teams here, right? You've got your design team, you've got your development and engineering team. And basically they work in a process that looks like this, where they plan something, they code it, they build it. So at this point, right, you have a development team, you've got a product in the market. You're not just like paper prototyping, trying to figure out if the concept works, right? You're in market, you have some form of product market fit. This is like a real company, right? So you're planning what you're gonna do in Q2 or in this particular sprint, which is 2 weeks. You're gonna code it, you're gonna build it, you're gonna test it, you're gonna release it, you're gonna deploy it out to customers. Those customers are going to operate it, as in they're going to use the app. You're going to monitor how they use it. You're going to get your analytics back. You're going to use those analytics to make a new plan. And then this is the virtuous cycle of product design. And once you start, you can never stop. A piece of software is never done. A startup is never done. It's you don't just like make an app and then put it out there to the world and say, okay, well, I'm a startup now. It's out there. People are going to buy it. It's like every week, every 2 weeks, you have to release a new version with new bug fixes and new features. And, now you're pivoting and you're addressing this new market and they have their own pain points that need their own features and people aren't using it quite the way you want it to. So you need to monitor them and make a plan to fix that. And away you go, right? So this is how software is made in one chart. Who it's made by, usually you have these kind of self-organizing cross-functional teams. So what does that mean, right? So let's say I work at Instagram. There will be a team there that's just in charge of signups. So what happens when I download Instagram for the first time in my life, I create a new account, and I I go through that flow for the first time. There'll be a team that is that's their only concern. That's the only thing they work on. There'll be designers on that team. There'll be a product manager. There'll be some developers. There might be a QA person, quality assurance, and the list goes on, right? Depending on what that team is working on, they'll have different people in it. But the point is that it's not like all the developers work in one corner and all the designers work on one corner. Everybody works in these cross-functional teams. They work in 2-week sprints, which means on Monday, we plan what we're gonna do, and then we work that week. And then on Friday, we kind of do like a little check-in, and then we work the next week. And then on that following Friday, all the code goes live. And then the next Monday, we start on something else. You start it and you finish it. You don't like be like, okay, this quarter, we're going to work on this. And people just kind of like go until it's done. You do everything in 2-week compartmentalized sprints. And you track things on what's called a Kanban board. So if anybody's familiar with like Asana or Basecamp or similar things to this, where you've got your backlog of like, you know, oh, there's a bug that every time somebody tries to share to TikTok, it crashes the app. So somebody writes a little ticket that says, fix that TikTok bug. And they put it into the backlog. What is the backlog? It's just the log of like back ordered things to do, you know? So then on that Monday meeting, when I'm planning what we're going to do for the sprint, we look at everything in the backlog and we say, okay, what are we going to look at? And Joey says, I'm going to work on that TikTok bug. So you move it into to do. And then he starts working at it and he moves it into progress. And then at some point he says, I think I've finished that bug. I'm going to put it to the QA person, quality assurance. So then the quality assurance person is going to whip out their phone and they're going to try and share that thing to TikTok. And if it doesn't crash the app, we'll say, okay, check, it works. And then they're going to deploy it, right? And then they're going to release it into the app. So now users out there in the wild can share to TikTok and it won't it won't crash the app. This is how all software is made. In this little flow, in 2 weeks, backlog to do, in progress, QA done. And I talked about how the kickoff meetings and the retros work. And then generally, most software companies will run a daily stand-up. So like in the morning at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, everybody in this cross-functional team will get on a call and I'll say, you know, hey, today I'm working on the TikTok bug. You know, it should take me the whole day. And if I have any blockers, like I might say, I need Francis to give me this one chunk of code. And it's just a way of like checking in with everybody to make sure everybody's on track and that nobody is holding up anybody else. So this is, in a nutshell, how all software companies work. So this is what it looks like in practice. So you've got this amazing process, right? And you've got this fine-tuned machine that with design thinking, design and engineering, you can basically like solve any problem given the right amount of resources. As founders, as people starting companies, it's super, super important to consider who does this well-oiled machine serve? Who is this serving, right? So we talked a lot about serving the user, right? And design thinking starting with the user needs. But a lot of companies will start there and then they become misguided and they start worrying about what the competition's doing or investor pressure or what's going on in the market. These are all important things. Business needs are important. Research and trends, also very important. These are all important things, but being very clear about which one is your top priority and that you will serve that one while knowingly underserving the other ones as a result. You know, if an investor says, I want A, but the users say, I want B, you need to set as a mandate in your company, which one will you serve, A or B, right? So as founders, this is your top priority, probably the most important job that you have once you're in the market is to make sure you're always guiding the ship towards one of these stars. As a designer, my opinion is that it should always be user needs, because if you're always addressing the user needs, then the users will always need you. So we'll talk about, okay, that's all well and good for like an established company. You got this well-oiled machine, you've got all this staff, you got all these investors you have to worry about. That's a pretty good position to be in. What about people who are in your shoes, just starting up? So when you're at idea stage, really the only thing you need to worry about from a design standpoint is this design thinking that we talked about and product design. What is this thing that I'm making and how is it serving my user? And how can I interact with the user to make sure I'm doing it right? Once you get into discovery, so now you have maybe prototyped a little bit, you've shown some people, you've got some positive feedback. You're like, okay, this idea has some legs. Some people actually want it. Let's dive a little deeper. Let's look at the competition. Let's look at the market. Let's look at the potential for monetization. Let's start wireframing a little bit and like bringing some life into this concept, you know, so that you can start getting some real signal from the market. You can start really testing and getting to a point where you're showing it to people who are the potential customers, and they're saying, yes, I would pay for this. And you're getting some signal. A lot of people skip from idea right to MVP, and they skip over these two steps. Incredibly dangerous, incredibly dangerous. Because like I was talking about the difference between an artist and a designer, an artist will skip from idea right to MVP because they don't care about what the customers think. They don't care about what anybody else thinks. It's all about them and their thoughts and what their opinion is and what their ego says. And what that's going to get you is something that you think is great, but maybe none of your customers do. So it's super, super important to plan, and get a ton of signal from your customers or potential customers if you can, before you start actually building the thing, or especially doing any programming or coding or expensive R&D or anything like that. And then beyond that, you're going to move into the first version of your product, and then the second version of your product, which is going to be, if the MVP is focused on the minimum viable product, as in what is the minimum I need to do to solve this problem for the customer, V1 is focused on, okay, what are all the supplementary things we need to add to really be a quality product that solves this problem for the customer? And then V2 is like, what other problems do these customers have that we can also solve so that we can scale and take more market share of this particular market that we're in, and optimize all the little nodes on our customer journey map so that we're getting a higher percentage of conversions at every touch point. So you can see as we go through this map, how you need more and more design help in your organization, but that you can start without very much. You don't need specialized skills like social media people or 3D people or photographers or copywriters. You don't need any of that stuff until way over here. So don't get bogged down with all that. So if you're a startup and you're at this early stage and you're not a designer, you might be thinking, when should I hire one? The truth is, the sooner the better. If you're a solo founder or you're a small founding party, I would start looking for a designer to join you as a co-founder. Startups that have designer co-founders have a just exponentially better chance of surviving than ones that don't, especially if that's a experienced designer that's done this before. I don't bring on anybody that's never done what their job before. If you are doing a job you've never done before, you should try to get out of the way as soon as possible and hire people smarter than you who have done it before. But the sooner the better. And the reason is that it's just proven to be the contributing factor to a startup success. This is a link, goes to that same McKinsey report, but basically it outlines something that we're really passionate about at Polyform, which is that there's two inflection points at a startup's journey that, if they have a design team in place, or at least design thinking going on, will ensure their success. If you're between idea and MVP and you're not doing any of this, reaching out to customers or using design thinking to design with the customer's problem in mind, you're probably not going to make it to MVP. You're probably just going to fail. And it's like 90% of startups fail in their first year. I would argue this is why. And then the next part is, once you've got an MVP in market and you've used the traction of that MVP to attract some seed money, to build like a really great first version of it, that's definitely when you should get some design help, because likely you have now exceeded the capabilities of your in-house team. And if you want to make something really, really great that'll make it to a Series A and then eventually to scaling, where things get really crazy, you will need to, you will need to do things that probably you can't if you don't have any design help in-house yet. So super important, try and get design help as soon as possible. Or if you're a non-designer founder, educate yourself as much as possible, as early on as possible. It's just gonna exponentially improve your chances of success, especially in that first year. And the benefits of a design team are basically that you have a process and team in place to address every problem quickly, and you can iterate on new features quickly and launch them with confidence. So spinning your wheels, trying to solve the problem, trying to figure out what to do next, trying to figure out where to go with your product is a symptom of not having a process in place. So you don't need designers to do this. You can do this as the executive team of your own company. But if you don't have a process in place for how to address your problems or how to iterate on new features quickly and launch them with confidence, then probably what you're doing isn't going to work. So it's super important to have a process in place, right? It's like imagine McDonald's trying to run if there's no process for how to take an order, and then for that order to get to the kitchen, and then for the kitchen to make the burger, and then for the burger to get in a bag, and then the bag to get back to the person at the delivery window and give it to the car, right? If there was no process for how to get that done, it would be a madhouse, right? It would be crazy. And I see so many startups trying to like get their thing off the ground and do a good job without that process. And it's just, you're just running around McDonald's trying to fulfill orders and nothing works. And the busier you get, the worse it becomes. So super important to have the process in place as soon as you can. This can be designers, this can be you. This is what it all looks like in practice. We've got about 15 minutes, I think, here. So I can whip through the tips and tricks really quick, and then we can just go full on QA. And I can come back to these slides that are relevant. But some really quick tips and tricks for you non-designers out there, which I assume are all of you. Paul Graham, who's the founder of Y Combinator, which is the greatest startup accelerator in the world. It's companies like Airbnb, Dropbox, Netflix have all come out of Y Combinator. He says, in a sense, there's only one mistake that startups make that kills them: not making something users want. So be super, 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 super certain that people want what you're making before you start making it. And it cannot be just your own opinion that people want it. You need to actually hear from them, and not your family and friends, actual customers who don't know you and don't know the brand. You need to be sure you're making something that solves their problems that they want, that they will pay for before you start. Here's $1 million tip: do everything on paper first before going into code. Just I can't stress this enough, how just like getting on a whiteboard with a couple people for an hour can save you thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars worth of development effort figuring out a problem, because development and engineering is just so expensive. So get into the mindset and habit of doing everything on paper first. Just do it to death on paper before you go onto the computer. And then finally, this was addressed in a couple of the questions, but if you don't know how to design a great user experience, or as somebody asked, a great user interface, stick to the operating system standards. Users are trained to use them, and they're heavily, heavily tested and validated. Again, you got the iOS Human Interface Guide, you got the Android Material Design Guide. This is me. We'll talk about the QA really quickly. One final thing before that is that at the back of this presentation, there's about 30 pages of resources regarding every single step a startup needs to take to design a great app. all the way from how to do design thinking. Here's a bunch of great videos from the Nielsen Norman Group. Here's a bunch of templates on how to do it. How to take an idea and take it to the next step, how to run discovery workshops, do market research, user research, and it just goes on and on. Like, here's literally step by step how to run a discovery workshop inside your organization. Here's how to make a user persona. You got a downloadable worksheet here. You've got all the extra reading and templates and stuff you could ever need. You got, how to run tests, how to write user stories, how to make information architecture, how to, make great brand stuff, how to do all types of product design, research, user testing. Everything you need to know basically is in here somewhere in some format. So definitely give that a look. It will be super helpful for you, especially if you're in the idea phase. And let's hop to the Q&A.
Thank you so much for that, Adam. I know we don't really have any questions, but there was one comment from David. I'll just read it out to the audience. So Agile methodologies is actually easier for startups and small companies. How about big companies? The bigger, the harder to be Agile. This is why startups win in innovation and new markets compared to more established companies.
Yep, totally agree. I've been brought on to these big dinosaur software companies several times to like lead, innovation initiatives and stuff like this. And their huge waterfall process of like planning out everything they're going to do for a year and then not budging on that plan is exactly why they fail. But also, huge companies can remain agile generally if they've started that way. So it can be very hard to move from a waterfall to agile development environment. But if they start that way, there's great examples of huge companies, some of the biggest ones in the world that still run in an agile method, like Tesla, for example. They're super agile heavy, etc.
And then next question comes from Olivia. First of all, she wants to thank you. A lot of insightful information throughout the presentation and all of the resources. Her question is, do you have any advice on identifying the customer need before the customer even recognizes that they have the need?
Yeah. So something that's kind of like a startup trope about like, sorry, how to start a great startup is scratching your own itch. If this is a problem because you've experienced it, that's a great opportunity for a startup. If you have the problem of your coffee is always cold and there's nothing to solve that problem, you intimately know that problem, and that is your unique point of view that will keep you ahead of your competition. If you're like, I'm going to make this thing and I don't know if people want it, I don't know if it's a problem, I don't know anything about the customer, I'm just going to make it, then that's kind of a backwards approach. You should find the problem first and then try and find a solution. If the customer doesn't know they have the problem, that's really difficult because you have to insert a lot of customer education there. I'll tell you actually where we kind of failed as a company pretty recently by making this assumption was last year and the year before. We ran our own accelerator. It was a product design accelerator called the Startup Blueprint. And our thing was teaching first-time non-designer founders the fundamentals of product design. And we were like, of course, this is a slam dunk. Nobody's teaching this. Everybody needs it. Every startup needs it. But the problem was that first-time founders don't know that they need it yet. They won't know it until they've launched their product and gotten to market and said, shit, I wish this was better designed. Everybody's complaining about the onboarding flow. Everybody's complaining about this and that and the other thing. We should have taken more time to consider the design of these things. But if you're a first-time founder who's non-designer, you don't know that yet. So we thought, of course, everybody's going to fill the classes for this thing. But in reality, nobody knew it was a problem yet. So it took heavy education, which is very expensive and takes many brand touch points. So what we ended up doing was partnering with accelerators who are acutely aware of this problem already, and they would impose our education program onto their students because they know that they need them, even if the startups themselves don't know that they need it. So educating a user on a problem they don't know they have is super expensive, and it should try to be avoided.
Okay. Next question comes from Rose. What are your thoughts about using social media to validate your idea? That is displaying an ad with your prototype.
It's great. It's the best way in a lot of ways. What we will do with physical consumer goods, especially retail goods for non-established brands, is so let's say we're working with Nalgene on this new water bottle, new tech water bottle. We'll make a fake brand called like, I don't know, so just Watertopia, whatever, right? And we'll show the new Nalgene bottle in the ads, and we'll make like a fake website that you can go to and purchase the water bottle from. But then they'll add it to their cart, and then when they go to purchase it, it'll say, "Oh, we're out of stock. Join the email wait list to get your bottle when we're back in stock." And then measuring that conversion of the ad to the website to the cart to actually trying to purchase the thing is all the validation you need that it's a hit or a miss. So that's a strategy we often employ. And you don't need to and you don't need to have the physical thing at that point either, right? If you just have like some great renders of what the water bottle could look like, that's enough to get people through that flow.
Okay. Next question comes from Ankit. So I have a B2B product idea. How do I interview potential customers for needs before building an MVP?
So if you are aware of the B that you're B2Bing, then you should know people in that industry, right? So I would just contact them on LinkedIn and say, "Hey friend, like let me take you for a virtual coffee and let me just ask you a bunch of questions about how you do business around this particular workflow." If you're creating a B2B product that right now there's no equivalent for in that person's day-to-day business life, then it'll be a hard sell to convince them that they need it. But if you say, "Hey, I want to ask you questions about how you guys do your accounting because I have an idea of how it could be done a much better way." If they're friendly to you, if they're people you've worked with before or people where you have mutual connections, or even sometimes just strangers, they're happy to hop on a call with you for 20 minutes and just give you their opinion. I would really recommend that. If you are at that stage, I would set as a goal to talk to 50 people before you start making the product.
So I do want to thank you so much for really taking the time to present and share all of your, the resources, the tips and the tricks. I know all of that will be really helpful in joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks everybody for coming. And if you have any more questions or like a really specific question, you can hit me up at hello@polyform.co. And thank you again for everybody coming and all the great questions.